Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another Miss Rogers Presents. And today we're going to look at learning lines. This is something that a lot of my students ask me about all the time. And so what I've put together is a bit of a mind map of lots of different ideas of ways that you could approach learning lines, and hopefully you'll find one thing to take away that you haven't tried before. So, first things first, we're going to think about recording ourselves. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can do this, and I'm going to run through a few of those now. First things first, I would suggest as early as possible you record the whole speech or the scene. This means in audio format, you can have it on your phone and you can be listening to it whether you're on the bus, whether you are in a break time or a lunch time, or just at home in your bedroom, almost like a podcast. You've got it there to be listening through. And the more that you can listen to that on the repeat, the better. Now you can delve into, as you progress through your rehearsals, something a little bit more complicated where you're recording just your own parts. This will help you think about, especially in a scene, we'll think about the sequential order of what you are learning, but it will also help you to fill in the blanks. So you're really having to stretch your memory and think about what the other person is responding to your lines. And in contrast to that, record just your partner's lines. So you've got another audio recording where you're looking at just your partner's lines, and that will allow you to have almost like a fill in the blanks recording. I've seen some great examples of this where students have left pauses in between their partner's lines as well, so that when they're listening back they can actually respond with their own lines and kind of insert their lines into it, so they're filling in the gaps. But again, all of this audio recording is just helping you to really fit together the sequencing and let you hear the lines over and over. The next thing I would suggest is writing it out. And again, there are a few different ways that you can do this. So the first is almost like a copy paste. So sit with the monologue, particularly this helps with monologues, but it's great with scenes as well. So sitting with it and actually copy and paste, write it out. It's the act of handwriting or typing into your computer that helps with your memory retention. So think about doing that maybe 2 or 3 times. Take the paper away, that's the next step. Writing from memory. So once you've done this a few times, you're a little bit further on in your rehearsal process. See if you can write down that monologue or write down that scene from memory. Again, the act of writing, physically writing, will help with memory retention, but also it will allow you to identify gaps in your knowledge, which you can then go back and rehearse a little bit harder. So which are the bits where you get stuck? Which are the lines or phrases that are causing you memory blanks? This will help with that. But also, if you force yourself to really try and write down from memory the entire monologue or the entire scene, what you'll end up with is kind of your impressions of that scene, even if you can't fully remember it. And that's going to help when you're in a situation where perhaps you've forgotten a line on stage and you need to improvise. Your impressions of what it is that you need to be getting across to the audience will come through. And then finally, in the writing it out category is flashcards. So I would suggest that you write down your line on one side of the flashcard and the response line, so your scene partner's line or your duologue partner's line, on the other side of the flashcard. And this way you can kind of test yourself as to what the responses would be to your lines, or by looking at your partner's lines, what was the line that came before, what is the line that came after. So if that's my cue line, what do I say next? What's fun about this one is that unlike the audio recordings, you can mix these flashcards up, so you can play around with them in multiple ways. So can you mix them up and put them back in order with just your lines or just your partner's lines? Can you mix them up and just recall from memory what the line before or after is, regardless of whether it's your line or your partner's line? This can work in monologues as well. If you are writing out line by line your monologue onto flashcards, again, that act of actually physically writing will help with memory retention, but then you've got a kind of sequential order of lines which you can play around with in the ways that I have mentioned. Okay, obviously we have practice, practice, practice. But there are lots of different ways you can do this, and actually, even if you're rehearsing a monologue, that doesn't have to be done on your own. So the first one is practice with someone. Even in a monologue, it can be beneficial to receive feedback on your performance. I always try and encourage my students when they're working on their monologues to get a monologue buddy, somebody that's going to be able to watch you, provide feedback, highlight bits that you may not have picked up on in terms of what's working well or what needs improving, or just noticing the moments where you look a bit lost or you've got a bit stuck on those lines. That can be invaluable information. They can also support you in by taking away that script much sooner, so that you are there to focus on your body language and your facial expressions and your use of voice, rather than being held behind this piece of paper, behind that script book. So if you have somebody with you, they can have that and they can prompt you, and that's almost like your first scaffolding to taking away all of that support, so it's just you on stage. So really utilize somebody else in the space. Another way that you can utilise your buddy is by watching them deliver your lines. You would be amazed how interesting this is. If it's a monologue, you might get a whole completely different perspective on the monologue. Something might just click, or you might pick an idea from something that they've done. They don't even need to be performing arts students or in the industry at all. They could be somebody at home. The way that they read a piece, the way that they read text back to you, could really open up a whole new meaning for you. And that will help with remembering the lines, because you remember the experience of watching somebody else. And finally, on this one, along with recording your audio of you speaking to help learn the lines, make sure you are recording milestone rehearsals at least once a week within your rehearsal timeline. Make time to record yourself in full view, so not just a head and shoulders like you're seeing me now, but in full view, so that you can get a full sense of your body language, your gestures, your facial expression, how you're using the stage space as you're rehearsing the piece. Watch that back. Be able to notice what other people are seeing in you, especially if you're getting feedback from a director or from a teacher or from your buddy that's helping you. It will just allow you to kind of see what they're seeing if you're able to watch yourself back. So again, really nice and easy on a smartphone. Record yourself and see the progress over time. So make sure that you are keeping all of that data, so that you can go back to it and look over and think, oh yeah, I forgot, I'm not doing that anymore. Why am I not using that bit of information? Why have I changed my facial expression there? How have I changed the stage space? And finally, we can have a little bit of fun by playing around with by performing arts discipline. So sometimes it's not always that easy for those that consider themselves to be more singers or dancers, for example, to learn lots of lines. But there are things, if you draw on your strengths, that will help you. So the first, dancers, block the piece first. You are so used to learning choreography and holding all of that physical muscle memory. Why wouldn't you do the same thing for a monologue or a scene? So actually block the piece first, like a piece of choreography, so you have that physical memory to draw back on. Then you can attach the lines, regardless of whether it's a scene or a monologue, to the movements that you are doing around the room. That might just help you lock in those lines a little bit quicker. Singers, think about how you learn melodies. There's this innate sense in you when you are singing that you know the rises and falls of the song. You just know where it's coming from. So harness that for your monologues and scenes. Learn it, focus on the rhythm, the pace, the dynamics, the intonation. All that audio stuff I spoke about at the beginning of the video is going to be really useful for this. Learn it like it's a song. Put a melody to it and learn it like it's a song. Once you've got it locked in there, then of course you can play around with it, you can change it up. But actually having that sense of, this is a song and I'm learning the melody of the song, the lines might help to come a little bit quicker and easier for you. And actors, Obviously, if acting is your main performing arts discipline, you're probably going to have the least amount of problem with learning lines. However, actors still do struggle. So I would suggest this one fantastic memory technique, which is all around image connections. And this is where you take images and attach them to lines, and then you can recall the image and it will help you recall the line. People do this in all different types of ways. One of the best ways I've seen is post-it notes all around your house. And so when you're going to make your cup of tea, there's some lines on the fridge. When you're going to get your sandwiches, there's some lines on the cupboard doors. When you're going to brush your teeth, there's some lines on the mirror. And that kind of connection of being on stage and being able to walk through your house and say, oh God, I've forgotten my line. What's the next line? I know it's in the bathroom. I know it's on the mirror. That helps recall it. You can also add images that you think are relevant to the monologue. So you might go line by line in a monologue and pick an image that links to that line. Print them out like a collage and have them next to the lines. Get creative with it. Have that poster up on your wall. Connect those images every time you are reading through it or working through it. And that might just help you to make those connections, especially if there are moments where you're getting stuck through the monologue.